We love leaders. We talk about leadership a lot at school, at work. We put it on our resumes, and we're told to develop it in ourselves. With all this talk about leaders, you'd think we could spot one in a crowd. They're red, and they stand on stuff. I Googled leaders, and I found this. That's ounces. It's not even the metric system, let alone liters. This is an example of bad leadership. So what does good leadership look like? Well, here's a simple diagram. Followers, leader, goal. Doesn't that clarify things? I feel better already. I actually like this next diagram. I think it represents leadership very well. You see, leaders, good leaders, are attacked by labels. So much so that they have to construct a circle around themselves for protection. Good leaders wear hula hoops. And this diagram is actually helpful because it begins to start building a definition of good leaders by providing some characteristics. So if you're in a crowd and you see someone who has integrity, vision, and recognizes, then you can say, hey, that's a leader. I know, because we talked about that. Is this diagram actually a good definition? No. Because these aren't the necessary and sufficient conditions that comprise leadership. In other words, these characteristics don't apply to all leaders. So let's try to find a better definition. The dictionary defines a leader as a person who leads. Thank you, dictionary, for using the word in the definition. It's very helpful. Not to worry, though, they provide some synonyms. The first one is guide. The definition of guide is a person who leads. Now, this seems strange to me. Either a leader is a person who leads and a guide is a person who guides, or a leader is a person who guides and a guide is a person who leads. But they can't both be a person who leads. That makes them the same word. Transitive property. Now, there is a point to all this, and here it is. We've talked so much about what makes good leaders that we've lost sight of what a leader actually is, fundamentally. We throw so many extra characteristics into the mix that we forget what makes a leader. And this becomes dangerous because when we expect unnecessary things of our leaders, we start excluding people from the position of leadership. When people don't meet our personal requirements, they're left out, and we lose so many great leaders because of it. Has anyone ever been to a leadership conference? Yeah, I've been to a couple. One of them looked like this, and another one looked like this. The main activities at these conferences was to stand up, dance, and scream. We did group chants and cheers, call and response and repeat after me style. Repeat after me. That doesn't sound much like leadership to me. And these conferences are very difficult for some people, namely introverts, because the overwhelming noise, socialization, interactions, it's miserable. No time for quiet, solitude. I remember being at these camps and all I wanted to do was write an essay about it. I didn't get the time. I didn't get the solitude for it. So I was left out. At leadership conferences, you hear things like this. A leader is a person who is positive. Most importantly, second, motivated. Third, confident. And if it's an athletic conference, they say they're competitive because why not? Oddly enough, a pattern you won't find in the history of America's best leaders is this. In his teenage years, Abraham Lincoln attended the George Washington Leadership Conference. He made lots of new friends and learned to work with the group. # George Washington rocks. Right? No. In fact, Abraham Lincoln spent his youth reading books at home. It was his favorite pastime. His whole life, he struggled with deep, deep depression. And as an orator, he was famous for having a meek and humble demeanor. He certainly doesn't come off as overly positive, confident, competitive, and yet he was one of the most influential leaders in American history. And so there is an ironic disconnect between what we expect of our youth leaders and what we see in the greatest leaders of our past. As I said, introverts feel excluded at leadership conferences. We exclude this group of people. They're underrepresented. Why? Do extroverts make better leaders? Well, there was a study on the Harvard Business Review blog network. It was a study of pizza delivery store managers and their employee satisfaction in context with the managers, or leaders, temperament. And it found this, that when employees did not give suggestions, the extroverted managers stepped up and led the company themselves, led to higher profits. But when employees gave suggestions to introverted leaders, they listened and they incorporated these into the plan. And in this case, introverts outperformed the extroverts. So clearly, depending on the circumstances, both leaders can outperform each other. So why do we limit ourselves to one kind? It seems foolish. So at this point, it becomes very important for us to clarify, to find what our definition of a leader really is. Here's my idea. A leader significantly influences society for the better. That's it. A leader significantly influences society for the better. They don't have to be loud about it. They don't have to be quiet about it. They don't have to have any other requirements. But we need to recognize them when they come, because otherwise we might miss out a lot. Let me tell you a story. When I was at one of these leadership conferences, I remember sitting in an auditorium, miserable. Not only am I introverted, but I also have an acute sensitivity to sound. It helps a lot when I'm doing music. But it's very painful when in a large crowd that's making noise. So I was crumpled in my chair in this auditorium, feeling ashamed and inadequate, unwelcome. A staff member at the conference came up behind my chair and he screamed into my already burning ears. He said, "Spencer, stand up. You got to stand up." Everyone else was dancing, waving their arms, doing these chants, standing up. And I said, "No, I don't have to stand up." He said, "Yes, you do. Stand up, stand up, stand up." And then he took his hands and he shoved them under my armpits and he yanked me up from my chair, waving me around in the air. He flung his plastic name tag and metal keys into my face and started hitting my nose to irritate me. I thought, here's this man physically assaulting me to get me to conform. Am I learning leadership yet? So I waited patiently until he decided to put me back down. And then I remembered what was on the back of the weekend's agenda booklet. I picked it up and I read on the back a quote from Dr. Seuss. It goes, "Why fit in when you were born to stand out?" And I thought, that's what I'm doing. I'm the only one not enjoying this. I'm influencing, I'm changing things. I thought, why fit in when I was born to stand out? So I pick this up and I point to it, I show it to him. And he looks at it and he says, "That's right." I thought, yes, I solved the conference. I get it. He was just challenging my leadership. Why should I fit in? He said, "That's right. Why fit in when you were born to stand up?" And at that point, I lost all respect for whatever definitions he would throw at me. Oddly enough, that evening, I escaped to solitude, to quiet, finally. I found a piano in an empty room and I began playing it. Well, some of the ambassadors at the camp heard the music and they came to the room. Over time, the entire camp came. It became a dance party, karaoke night. It's one of those memorable experiences for most of the campers, and it's because I went off and I didn't follow the false assumptions that were shared at camp. So this man qualified as a leader. He was competitive, motivated, confident. He probably thought he was positive too. But was he really a leader? See, leaders, don't limit yourselves to what people expect of you. The best leaders are surprising. The best leaders take us new directions. All you have to do is influence society for the better. As long as you do that, you could be a leader. Remember, there are all kinds of leaders. Leaders who are loud, leaders who are quiet. There are nurturing leaders, assertive leaders, quiet leaders. And if you're a leader, you don't have to be read. You don't have to stand on stuff. But I guess you should probably wear a hula hoop. Thank you.